Tune in to the WWAY News at 6 p.m.
Thank you for joining us tonight for your News at 6. I'm Hannah Patrick.
I'm Randy Aldridge. We want to get straight to our WWAY team coverage of last night.
For the biggest and most compelling stories that make a difference.
On the scene shortly after the blaze began and has the story now.
Cleveland is one of the fastest growing towns in the country.
First court appearance this morning in Pender County.
WWAY News at 6 p.m. This is the place.
I'm probably okay to have one more drink before I drive home. I'm probably okay. I open the window to stay alert. Probably okay. I just popped some gum in my mouth.
Step out of the car, please.
I probably made a mistake.
Probably okay isn't okay when it comes to drinking and driving. If you see a warning sign, stop and call a cab, a car, or a friend. Buzzed driving is drunk driving. A message brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Enjoying Big Talker Network is as easy as asking for it. Program your digital home assistants such as Google Home, Alexa, and Siri to stream Big Talker Network content by simple voice command. Enjoy convenient hands-free access to program whenever you want, however you want by asking for Big Talker.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Asylum, your refuge in a world gone mad. As promised, we're going to have cultural commentary from the one and only Chad Adams here in a moment, but before we do, want to make sure everybody goes to the Big Talker website, downloads the app for Android, iOS devices, using the Listen Live tab, or you can peruse our content our schedule of content, as well as sending an email with any comments, questions, concerns, compliments, or critiques. We can't get better without you. Welcome, Chad. How you doing this morning?
Oh, moderately neato.
Yeah, you enjoying the first couple of days of summer?
It is fascinating. You know, the days get shorter from here until Christmas. You know, it's getting, but it doesn't feel. It's always funny. Mentally, we always think these are the days get longer. July and August, the dog days of summer, but they start getting shorter. Yesterday, 2 days ago, the longest day of the year.
Yep.
But it's beautiful, and June's. You know, parts of June have been warm and parts of it quite nice. It's always weird at the beach. I was coming back from the mountains 2 days ago, and the thermometer on the car, you know, every car's got a built-in thermometer, hit 101 just outside of Lumberton. Whoa. I was just watching it creep up and hit 101, and then as I came across the bridge at Oak Island, it drops down to 89. You know, just a 10-degree drop just in that 60 miles or so. So it's just, you know, the coast is a finicky, strange, interesting place. But I tell you what, it's wet blanket time, isn't it? When you walk outside, you feel that humidity just grab you.
Make you stick to everything.
Yeah.
Man. So now that their primaries are over, I'm sure there's going to be some battles going on. Do you think... I've been curious, and I've been wanting to get your perspective on the timing of the hearings versus the timing of the primaries that had been rescheduled across the country. I know in North Carolina it had been delayed by, 3 months?
3 months, yeah.
So do you think there's something with this? And they also released a bunch of UFO information, so I think there's like some divide and distract going on. It's like, what the hell is happening?
Well, look, there's a couple things. There's the X-Files kind of thing that a few people pay attention to. I love a good conspiracy. You know that I've not shied away from that. I did a couple days on WBT out in Charlotte last week, and talking about conspiracies. Not for very long because the focus is on what's really happening to people. I mean, you know, people are feeling it at the gas pump. They're feeling it when they go, you know, if you look, you know, most of us nowadays, we use credit cards. So we go in, you use your Apple Pay or use your credit card, and then you go home and you buy your groceries. And you pay attention. Most people kind of think, yeah, this is a decent price. This isn't. They look at meats and their heads blow off. And then at the end of the month, when that credit card bill is due, you notice that it's significantly higher, the overall cost of everything. I'm someone who I pay it off every month. I don't pay interest. I don't pay fees. But I notice, I can track it, and you can look at it because credit card companies are really good at giving you lots of information. It's astounding to me, the significant cost increase across the board for everything. And it's going to be reflected in rents that are going to go up. whenever, and we haven't even gotten to reval. I mean, I could spend days talking about Brunswick County, but the overall issue that's really going on is the impact on people's bottom line. And the situation in Ukraine, the southern border, there's not really any issue that the Democrats are having a lot of success with. So even these January the 6th hearings, regardless of your political stripe and whether you think it was the worst thing and you thought that a bunch of unarmed people were going to overthrow the entire U.S. government without a single shot being fired, if you thought that, it's not playing well to the public. And so when you look at what the public is looking at right now, and I'll give you an example, is the John Locke Signal. They released a survey, and it's about 19 hours ago. So it was yesterday late or yesterday midday or whatever. And it's not good for Democrats. It's absolutely horrific. If you look at this, the Beasley-Budd race, Budd's ahead of Beasley by about 5 points. So she's actually overperforming for Democrats right now. But in the generic ballot, and we've never, in your lifetime or mine, in North Carolina, we've never seen numbers like this. The generic legislature ballot. In other words, if you walk into a poll anywhere in North Carolina for the most part, and you're looking at whether there's a Democrat or Republican, you don't know who's running. The disparity between Democrats and Republicans is 12 points. Republicans 51%, Democrats 39%. That's huge in North Carolina. We're considered kind of a purple state. You've got a Democrat attorney general, Democrat governor. You got 2 Republican senators. The vast majority of folks in the legislature are Republican, but you have Democrats that get elected. The generic congressional ballot, that means if you're walking in, you're considering voting for a congressional candidate. The generic ballot there, 52% Republican, 41% Democrat. That's a plus 11. Biden is at 33% approval, 60% disapproval. Never seen numbers like that in these polls in the 30 years I've been covering politics in North Carolina. Never have I seen a disparity like that where Democrats are that upside down. Democrats are shedding support in black communities. They're shedding support in Latino communities. Across every demographic, they're losing support. They are out of, and so, it's easy to say they're just out of touch. They're just out of touch. But it's far deeper than that. There's a level of discomfort that people, and they're laying the blame for what's going on right now, whether it's deserved or not, right at the heels of the current president and inhabitants of the White House and who runs Congress. Democrats are in full control across the spectrum, Senate, House, and the presidency. And in North Carolina, the governorship, they just have no faith in Democrats' ability to lead. And that's, in Wilmington, right here where the Asylum is broadcast out of, there should be an easy race between Deb Butler, the Democrat incumbent, and John Hennett, the upstart Republican challenging that. That's a 10 to 12-point district, the way it's drawn. Should be perfect for Deb Butler. It's going to be a struggle for her to win that race. That's how bizarre it is right now.
And do you think that there's going to be more endorsement-based influence?
I don't think people give a rat's butt about endorsements right now. I think they're looking at their bottom line, and they've decided who they're blaming. And that's why, if you looked at the January 6th hearings, so they went out and they got a Hollywood producer to produce these hearings to make it more interesting, more palatable, the angles of the shots, the way they're doing it, the way they're scheduling it, the times they're scheduling it. And even with all of that, it's kind of like all the king's horses, all the king's men, that when you're a kid. They can't put this Humpty Dumpty back together. The ratings are abysmal. People compare and contrast, and they say, yeah, what happened on January 6th was horrible, but so were the BLM riots last year or 2 years ago when buildings burned. So are, all these things are bad, and they don't single out. And a lot of this is really to stop Trump from ever being a candidate again. And it's just not resonating because people are thinking they've got buyer's remorse right now, and it's just not good. And then this thing today that got released, I don't know if you've seen it or not. It's kind of funny, but it's a placard. It's a little handheld note that a camera caught of Biden going to a presser, and it literally tells him, come in, take your seat, then call on this person, let them ask you a question, and then after this is done, then leave the room. And it's gone like wildfire online, and it just feeds into the narrative that the president really isn't in control of what the hell's going on.
Well, that's been true of a lot of presidential situations where they're little pressure
possibly,
cards.
But the bite falling, the president reading teleprompters, this particular one, he's, 79, almost 80, and that's playing in. It's not playing well. I mean, he's actually, remember when people made fun of Reagan? Reagan was much younger than Joe Biden when he left office. Reagan was younger than Biden when he left office.
Well, how about we make a new rule? Nobody over the retirement age of 65 is allowed to be in office, regardless of office.
Well,
because if you're supposed to be retired, get the hell out. Let somebody else do the job.
Everyone ages a little different, but clearly, when Biden's been in office for 4 decades, maybe we ought to have term limits. Maybe that's an answer thing.
As
if
well,
you've been there 46 years and you're blaming everybody else when you've been in leadership for 4 decades, and you can't blame everybody else when you've been in leadership for that long and you assume no responsibility for the mess of things. So,
still demonstrated absolutely no marketable skill whatsoever. So a job that requires no experience and no knowledge,
Well, I disagree with that. I think that the American public, there's a couple of things that play into the presidency. If you historically, obviously there's a popularity aspect to it. There's a charisma aspect to it. When you looked at the Nixon Kennedy, and I don't need to go back too far, but in the television age, Nixon Kennedy, you're wise enough, I should say, to recognize, Kennedy, if you listened to it, you would have thought Nixon won, but if you saw it, you knew that Kennedy won because Nixon looked sweaty, looked nervous. Just in the television age. So there's a lot of charisma. There's also a lot of leadership that takes place. And people want to believe the person's in charge, whether you loved Obama or hated Obama. I never got the feeling that ultimately he wasn't in charge. He may have had an agenda that I disagreed with. There were many issues I didn't like.
But his hand was on it.
His hand was on it. I think the same for whether you hated Trump or didn't like Trump. I felt he was on it. With George W. Bush, I felt there were some other more powerful people around him. I think he was ultimately the president, but I think that Dick Cheney was certainly one of the most powerful vice presidents we've ever had. And there was a cabinet around him that had a lot of powerful folks in it. And moving on back, Bill Clinton, I felt was, disagree with him on a lot of things, didn't like what he did, but I felt like he ultimately would tell people to go to hell if he needed to. So there are aspects of the presidency that people are in. You need powerful people. Hey, when George Bush, the senior, was in there, heck, he was head of the CIA. He was the lead spook in the country. So this guy was mired in politics, mired in D.C. He was as swampy as you get. But was he competent? I think he was competent, out of touch, which ultimately led to his his downfall in the '92 election. But was he competent? He was competent.
He was involved.
Yeah.
Which is not something we can say for a lot of the. Apparently, the primary turnout was in the single digits in many districts.
Well, and a lot of people, there weren't a lot of primaries. I mean, in some counties, you may have had a sheriff race usually drives things up, but in a lot of places there weren't really contentious primaries, and the Senate didn't excite people. It really, look at, like you said, the turnout for the U.S. Senate race. If I were to go, and I wish we had the depth, and we will, I hope, to do these man-on-the-street interviews, because I think the preponderance of ignorance that is out there, and I don't mean, a lot of times ignorance is used as a negative phrase to insult people. You're an ignorant fool. You say things like that. But the truth of the matter is ignorance in its utilization is just an overview that you're unaware of things. It's a systemic lack of awareness. And, in the age of technology where information is more available than it's ever been in the history of mankind, it's remarkable the degree to which people know more about the Kardashians than they do the people who control their pocketbooks and who control their rights. I'm amazed every day at folks who don't even know a lot about the freedoms that are being taken away from them at the local level. Well, if they live at the coastal communities, I was remarking to my wife, we were driving, and you'd see this huge new development going in. And Brunswick County is notorious for this. There's a massive new development, and here it's a lot of swampland, so you have to systemically drain areas. So you bring in fill dirt, you dig ditches, you get the water off, then you can build. And I don't have a problem with that. I mean, growth is a part of things, and Brunswick's not, there's no shortage of wildlife. People say it's being displaced, but it's remarkable. As I sit here, I'm looking at deer in the marsh right now. So got this beautiful scenery of the Cape Fear River and the boats coming out, and there's deer out in the marsh eating and doing fine, frolicking, being deer. But when you see that, what you become acutely aware of is a lot of that development is going to be comprised of people who either upgrade a home because they can afford the new homes that are going to be built there, but a lot of them are going to be transplants from up north. They're going to be Jersey, they're going to be New York, they're going to be Massachusetts, but a lot of people from up north that are moving down here, we call them halfbacks because it's halfway to Florida and halfway to Florida and back, halfbacks. They don't have to travel as far to go back and forth to see relatives. But here's where it gets interesting. Is they become the chief environmental wackos that decry everything that's going on while living in the very place that did exactly what they claim they're opposed to. In other words, they come down, and then all of a sudden they get really active environmentally and scream at every new development, scream at every new road, scream at everything that they believe affects any degree of wildlife.
When they used to live in a wildlife reserve.
Yeah, exactly. And the difference between a conservationist and an environmentalist is a conservationist is just an environmentalist with a gun. That's how I would describe myself. I mean, I love wildlife. Drop me in the woods anywhere. I love it. Love being out there. And the only thing, I think hunters have done a remarkable job of saving certain species like wild turkey and deer and ducks and other things because they make sure they want to be able to continue doing that for their kids and future generations. The only thing I like to shoot wildlife with is a camera. But that's me, but that's just me. But again, it's amazing the way environmental laws and regulations and activism, even when I was building, and I know this is like a monologue, when I was building, have been in the process of building a home, and when I went through the permitting process, and I have a lot that has water on it, and I built a bulkhead around it to protect that lot because it was being eroded. And we were able to protect that lot with a bulkhead. Otherwise, I would have lost the lot. You wouldn't believe the number of people that would go by, and they could see it from a certain road, and report to the city that environmental laws were being violated. That by virtue of the fact that I built a bulkhead to protect the lot. Now, I had to go through hoops you wouldn't believe.
Because the permitting alone, I bet, was crazy.
And that's just that's not even building the house. That's just building the bulkhead. The bulkhead is one set of rules. Building the house is another entirely different set of rules. And CAMA comes out, the Coastal Area Management Authority, they will measure. They'll take a tape measure and go, they'll determine where mean high tide is, and they'll measure in 35 feet. Now think about a lot. If you have a lot that has water on two sides and you measure 35 feet from mean high tide into the lot, no matter how big your lot is, it becomes less buildable. A lot of coastal lots very small. If I had a normal size lot, that would have been an unbuildable lot that I could never really sell, that I would have had to pay taxes on forever unless I gave the lot to the city. That's how ridiculous the laws have become.
Well, that sounds like a setup.
Oh, it is. It's absolutely a setup. And the city has benefited from this. When hurricanes damage coastal area homes,
I mean, that's a great way to get around the eminent domain thing, isn't it?
Oh, Oak Island's done it for years. Most coastal communities do. Forget eminent domain. They get people to turn their lots over to the city when a hurricane damages their home and they can't rebuild it. It's condemned. I'm sorry, there's been damage. Water can get here. You can't rebuild. And then the person says, well, I got to continue paying property taxes on a beachfront lot. They're like, yeah, you kind of do. And you have to clear this lot, too. And they get to the point that they sell it. And then the beach renourishment money comes in. They rebuild the dunes. They rebuild everything. And all of a sudden, that lot is buildable again years later. And the city gets to turn around and sell it, make good money on it, and it becomes property taxable again. So it's a great racket. And unfortunately, it's completely legit and legal. But in my case, the funniest part of my building process was with the bulkhead. As they were looking at it, they spotted a certain type of grass that was next to the water. And when I say a certain type of grass, it's a certain type of seagrass or ocean grass, marsh grass that is considered special, endangered, whatever. I mean, any number of things you want to say that I can't touch it. Now, I'm not talking about like a field of grass. I'm talking about maybe 6 root systems, 6 pieces of grass that I'm not allowed.
Voluntary tributes, I think my dad would call them.
If I sent you the picture, you would laugh. But they said, nope, you can't touch that. So at the end of my lot, and it's so funny, we had to cut in behind that seagrass to build the bulkhead with that grass out in front of it. So that grass, and I said, well, isn't the bulkhead going to make water kind of move around that point a little bit more? And they said, oh, yeah, in a few years that grass will be gone. And I said, well, they literally told me that it would be gone. But in the meantime, I couldn't build to protect the land that was there and create better situations for the grass. So on the other end of my lot, there's this kind of grass that grows to about 5 feet in height. And it is just like a marsh version of bamboo. This stuff is huge. And I said, well, how come, what about that stuff? And they said, oh, well, that's considered invasive. You can do whatever you want to there. Now, and I thought, yeah, exactly. So I got put riprap rock in there, and I can cut all of that down anytime I want to. But in trees, I had to go out and do a list of trees that I had on the lot, and you have to measure them at 5 feet. How thick are those trees? And you have to hand write every one of the trees on the lot, because if they're a certain number of inches at 5 feet in height, then those are considered trees you're not supposed to really touch. Anyway, it's bizarre. I don't want to bore.
So you have a puzzle board left of what you can build on your lot. So you probably have the strangest.
Well, we got to
architectural
the point where
footprint.
I asked them at one point. I said, "So the only thing I can almost put on here is a mobile home," and they said, "Well, kinda, but we were able to get to the point where we got a design and designed it from scratch and made it work, and I think I'm going to be pleased in the end." But it's so funny because, like I said, I'm a conservationist, is an environmentalist with a gun. That's me. So I wanted to save and protect the live oaks and the indigenous trees and things like this, and I did ultimately. But it's an odd process that doesn't reward, your intent. It doesn't reward much. It is, and now, here's the funnier part. Oak Island has and this is not unusual, has an impervious surface regulation. Now, what that means, and there's a certain amount of, so if you have a lot, say you have a big old lot, and you have a house, and it displaces X amount of square footage on that lot, you can only have X amount of square footage of impervious surface. So, and
like a foundation.
So we met that. You can have the foundation, and you can have a little driveway, but you can't have concrete out here. If you want to put a tennis court on your lot, you can't necessarily do that. You can make it out of gravel, but you can't make it out of concrete. So where your driveway meets the street, okay? So let's say you have a pretty driveway, and you want to attach it to the street. Now, the street is paved. Now, in my case, the street isn't, but that's another discussion for another time. The 8 feet between what's called the right-of-way, so where the government technically owns part of your front yard, that can't be paved. So you have a pretty driveway that's paved, and then between that point and the street, which is paved, must be impervious. I mean, must be porous. In other words, it can be gravel. So you have a nice driveway, then you'd have to have gravel, and then you have a paved street because of, and now here's what's even funnier. That law has apparently been on the books for some time, but they haven't enforced it. So everyone's built all these illegal driveways, and now they're starting to enforce it more. And so there's going to be a bunch of postage stamp-looking odd driveways with an 8-foot barrier of gravel.
And from a top-down view of your house, it's probably going to end up looking like a Mercedes logo, having to build a little bit in this direction until you hit a tree root, and then a little bit in this direction until you hit the grass, a little bit in this direction.
I didn't even scratch.
And I bet the driveway goes around like some, what was that guy's name? Pee-wee Playhouse looking curly cue.
No, you have to build the driveway part of your house. You can't build it to be creative. You have to build it, adjacent to the street because there's setbacks and stuff like that.
Right.
And it gets even funnier because there's, even where the water drips off your house, you have to have a special water containment system.
But you can't save the runoff. You can't.
No, you're right. You can't. But
you can't keep the rainwater, but you do have to move it around your house.
You have to have a rainwater containment system. There's so many. It's weird. I mean, I've built houses in other places before, never had to deal with this level of minutia, not to mention citizen complaints. Because the citizens many of them don't realize how difficult it is to go through the building process. They just want to complain. So I asked the city, have you got a lot of complaints about mine? They said, oh, yeah, over 24 people had complained about.
Well, why did you paint it bright pink?
No, not that. Oh, you hadn't even got that. That was in the mountains. That's an entirely different issue. There are certain paint colors. You have to get your paint color approved by the city in many mountain areas.
I understand that as an HOA. HOAs have had that.
No. That's called a
city
ordinance.
This is a city ordinance.
City and county. If you build on the side of a mountain in certain areas, like Jackson County, I believe, you have to have your colors approved because you don't want to distract from people who look up into the hills and might see your house, because that's offensive.
Well, if you want your house to stand out, Pepto-Bismol pink is the perfect color.
No, illegal. That would be an illegal color. You think you live in this land of freedom.
Right.
That's the irony.
So you can't keep
really
the rainwater, right? I mean, it rains down on you from above, but you can't have it. You can't keep it. And you can't paint your house but certain colors that have to be pre-approved. Yeah, that's some freedom right there. Now, we can use those same...
I can't even build. I have to keep... I couldn't even have a bathroom on the first floor because I'm in an EV... I think it's EV or AE zone, which is considered a flood zone. And if you're not above 11 feet, it has to be 11 feet elevation for you to have either a bathroom or room or living space. So I had to build up above that. Now, what's even funnier is when you have to put your air handlers and stuff for your AC units, they have to be, so at my lot, it has to be another 5 feet above the 7 feet to get to 12 feet, which is over 11 feet. It's just an odd, weird way of, and I don't know. And when Isaias came through, I don't know if it did anything. All those ordinances did a whole lot to help. There were still fires and houses burned down and deer swimming through the streets, and a lot of the places underwater. Now, if God comes and takes it, God can violate the ordinances all day long. They hadn't figured out how to pass the anti-God ordinances yet, except in schools. So that's different.
Yeah. But at least it keeps you safe. The next time we have a major storm, I'm coming to your place with a John boat.
And it was weird so I'm staying right now on the other end of the island down at Caswell Beach, which is a lovely place. But that particular storm, all that happened on this end of the ice, it's weird how isolated things can be. On that end of the island, on the eastern end of Oak Island, because Oak Island has a curious way of facing south. So, the sun rises on one side of the island and sets often in the water, especially during the winter. So it's one of the most unique places on the East Coast. But when Isaias came through, when that hurricane, and we'll probably have some more, I mean, we will. It's just a matter of when, not if. The water just rose. So there were pictures, I remember when you could take pictures, it looked like this house was on an island because the water had risen all the way around it and into it a little bit, but didn't do any damage. It got about 2 inches into the house, I think. But it's just weird how different storms affect things differently. And no matter how much you plan, nature is a bitch. Excuse my language, but man, she has a fury, and you just can't plan. There's certain things you just can't plan for. If you build your house out of concrete, you'll withstand the wind, and it's not the wind blowing, it's what the winds are blowing. It picks up a mailbox and throws it at your house at 160 miles an hour. That's a very different impact.
It's not the wind, it's the stuff in the wind.
It's the stuff in the wind, and so it becomes projectile. So, and also, if you have enough beach erosion, if you built your house beachfront with concrete, it doesn't matter. If the beach comes in, the beach comes in. It just does. So, anyway, we do our best, and things are vastly safer. And I could talk all day long about how we have more fireproof houses than ever before. At the same time, fire departments are trying to expand their power and get more money. New Hanover County's giving people more money. City of Wilmington's giving people more money. Brunswick County just had a massive pay hike across the board. Right now it's raining money in Brunswick County. The commissioners have yet to see an expense that they'll turn down. I think they're afraid of people in power in Brunswick County or something because they won't turn it. The more that they ask for, the more they get. And as we're heading into a very difficult economic time, Brunswick County is flush with cash, and it's the best kind of money because it's other people's money, and so they have no reluctance to spend it whatsoever. Which is interesting because it's a Republican county that doesn't seem to have any kind of conservative leaning at all. It's bizarre, but we could spend days on Brunswick County.
Well, it almost sounds like there's a job opportunity down there. If there's plenty of money, then shoot.
Government job in Brunswick County is the greatest job you can get. While other companies, are having trouble finding work, Brunswick County is giving 20% pay raises to a lot of folks. It's bizarre. And again, now next year they're going to have a reval. And here's what's going to happen in places like Brunswick. They're going to have a revaluation. So that means the county goes out and determines, this happens by law, it has to happen every 8 years in every county in the state. And some counties do a more accurate job. They do something called a full lift and measure, where they actually go out and physically measure and look at people's lots and houses and stuff. I don't know if Brunswick will do that. They'll probably be a bit lazier and just do an old reval and update things. But what's going to happen is they'll go out and they'll assess. They'll say, okay, this property is worth X based on sales. They'll go into Bolivia. They'll go into Ocean Isle. They'll go into Sunset, Bald Head. They'll look at these things. They'll say, here's what we believe everything is worth. And they'll do a reval. So what you're going to see in that reval is that the coastal property values will be going through the roof relative to 8 years ago. So we'll be comparing 2023 to 2015. And you're going to see massive value increases in the coastal areas. You'll see increases in everywhere. You'll see it in Charlotte. You'll see it in Leland. You'll see it in Ash. You'll see increases. But it'll be dramatic at the coast. And what we'll have, so then the county has to declare, these county commissioners will have to declare what the equivalency. So let's just say that they get $100 million a year. They get a lot more than that, but let's just say $100 million. And they say, okay, well, our tax rate was 64 cents to get $100 million. And they'll have to say what that penny, so if the values go way up, then they'll lower the tax rate. Now, that's not lowering taxes. That's lowering the rate to get the same amount of money. That's what we call revenue neutral. So
they did that to my house.
Right. So 64 cents gives us $100 million, and now the new revaluation, 34 cents gives us $100 million. That'll be the new revenue neutral rate. Now, that's all well and good, and it lets the county commissioner say, see, look what we did. We didn't raise your taxes. But what will happen, there will be a dramatic increase in tax revenue coming from the coast, from the beaches. So the property values are going to go way up. The taxes for everyone living all along the coast are going to go way up, even if they do it revenue neutral, because Brunswick County has had no fiscal discipline, none in the past 10 years. It has spent and spent because it's made so much money. There's so much growth here that they have spent and spent and spent. And they have spent money in places that, no real like-minded conservatives would spend money, and a lot of it. And so when that happens, and it will, next year it will, it's happened so many times that it's amazing that they repeat the same mistake. Rents at the coast and the cost of living at the beach will go up dramatically. And because of taxation, right now, insurance along the coast has increased about 50 to 80%, depending on what your property is. But if you're coastal, I've seen all of my coastal properties have gone up about 80% on insurance. That's huge. And when the taxes come to match that, you're going to see maybe a 15 to 20, 25% increase in taxes on already expensive property. The coast of Brunswick County, and that's when there will be a small revolution, and the county commissioners will say, we don't have an answer. And they're not going to have an answer because they haven't prepared for what's coming. New Hanover will face similar things. I don't know when their reval process is, but if it isn't coming up, they're going to see the same thing because New Hanover County hasn't necessarily been too fiscally disciplined either.
Oh, man. Something I've not been paying attention to, but there was something in the news recently about some of the valuations and tax rates, how they were being adjusted to reflect the new situation. And apparently the feds are about to release a higher loan rate as well.
Oh, yeah. The Fed's going to increase the rate 75 basis points, so 0.75%. They're considering doing another 50 basis points beyond that, which would be a 1.25. That's huge. And there's a lot of sense. In fact, this morning I was watching some coverage that there's a sense of panic amongst some members of the Federal Reserve Board. So they're not sure if you raise that, you'll definitely slow things down, but it could increase inflation. They don't know exactly, they think they can change monetary policy and control the economy. It's a very Keynesian view of things, but that isn't necessarily what will happen. They don't know. So when you have a reactionary Federal Reserve and they're doing these wild swings, the impact on the economy could be significant. You're right about that. So right now there are a lot of headwinds heading into difficult times. Counties and cities that were smart, counties and cities that were preparing for difficult times, building up their fund balances and things like that, and not spending money. Because when you have a massive pay increase, that's a recurring expense. There's two kind of expenses in city, county government, and in federal government for that, or in your life. There's recurring expenses, your power bill every month. That's a recurring expense. And there's a capital expense. You bought a car. But you don't buy a new car every year. So it's a huge expense. That's why you finance it. And it makes it a kind of a recurring expense. But in city, county government, when you give everybody raises, that's forever. You continue those raises. And when times get tough, they never really get tough for county and city governments because they can just raise taxes and have an infinite supply of money. But it's
or raise parking.
Well, yeah, but it's parking fees. There's a reaction to that. You can't really react to property taxes except throw your county commissioners out of office or your city council. But with parking fees, when people don't park there, at a certain point, people won't use it, and that's when you can't count on certain fees. You can't count on certain things like you say, okay, well, if we raise parking fees, we'll get a 20% increase here.
Well, that's what Carolina Beach discovered. They tried to do year-round parking, and they had pegged it as generating $35,000 in 3 months or $60,000. Something ridiculous. Nope.
Downtown Wilmington should consider some side. They should.
Oh yeah,
there should be
what they're doing to the parking.
A way to park downtown. Parking is a mess downtown. There should be a way for folks to purchase a year-round parking pass.
Nope.
For people who live down there, but they won't consider that. It was the same thing. It's so funny. This is a great example of where governments screw things up and don't pay attention to the way things change. And that was with taxi cabs. City of Wilmington and most cities that have taxis award medallions. They award certificates for X number of taxis. So the taxi companies working with the city determine what the need for X number of taxis are. And they award a certificate for those. They're very expensive. In New York, they're really expensive. You almost have to inherit those things. They're so
right.
So,
like rent, controlled rent.
It is. It's a controlled number of taxis, which is all well and good Monday through Friday from 8 to 6 p.m. when there's only 25 taxis needed at any given point in time. And I don't know the exact number, so this is just an example. But come Thursday night, Friday night, and Saturday night at 2 o'clock in the morning, when you have 500 people that need to get home safely, and you only have 60 taxi cabs, it's a nightmare, and that's when you get massive DWIs and DUIs because people don't want to wait an hour and a half for a taxi cab. So Wilmington became kind of one of the biggest rackets for DUI, DWIs because it created a way for people not to be able to get home, and it had very limited roads that people were forced to get on, and so it was a great racket between the legal profession and the city to create massive DWIs because people just wouldn't wait an hour and a half. And plus they're inebriated, so Then Uber and Lyft come along. Uber and Lyft changed the dynamic dramatically. The city couldn't react to it. The taxi cabs wanted to limit Uber and Lyft. They a lot of times try to limit it at airports to protect taxis. And I'm not putting taxis down. They're trying to protect their own turf. But Uber and Lyft changed the dynamic. All of a sudden, I don't need the government to get me a ride home. Anybody can be an Uber or Lyft driver. So what happens is at 2 o'clock in the morning when people need them, there's a lot of people that are ready to go to work for Uber and Lyft. All of a sudden, people can get from point A back over to the college campus area. They can get home safely with rideshare programs. And guess what? DUIs and DWIs drop, which is good for society. People can get home safely, also good for society. And the city was left looking like a bunch of ill-tempered anteaters or something. So they just couldn't do anything about it.
Oh, they did. They did.
Yeah. Well, they tried
reduced the legal threshold.
Oh, well, but the point being,
so that way more people could be convicted and make more money off of each conviction. Sure, because you lower the threshold and you can arrest more people. Well, the fewer people you get, then you can arrest them. Right.
But again, government is really bad at looking ahead. It couldn't predict the impact of the cell phone on society. It couldn't predict the impact of high-speed internet. What it does is it runs in after the fact and says, oh, we need to fix this. We need to go and expand. We need to go pay.
By people that have no marketable skill and are definitely questionable in their intelligence, that they've done no research in their own life, that they have to work
Well,
in
they feel
government in
good.
order to have a job.
Whenever you walk in a politician's office and you see a bunch of certificates on the wall from people thanking them, you know that those people are most likely to raise taxes and spend obscene amounts of money and go around tramping on individual rights and freedoms. Because that's what politicians inadvertently do. They don't mean to. They if you look at this last mile of internet, there's this big move to bring broadband to rural North Carolina, which sounds really nice and altruistic, and we want to do it. Not realizing that there is a for-profit model where people compete to get internet to you. You can ride around in the mountains, or you can ride around in eastern North Carolina where things are, one person every square mile in many areas of the state. But truthfully, drive around and look at it. And you're going to spend how much money to get high-speed internet to that one person? And so the internet companies realize there's no way these people are going to get there. Let's get the government to pass a bill and subsidize me putting in infrastructure so 10 people can get gigabyte internet. You do it under the auspices of helping people, not realizing that people often choose to live in remote areas because they don't want to be in the cities. They don't want to have all that. So that's an example of where governments attempt to do well, to do good for society, doesn't necessarily bring a societal benefit, because they can do all that infrastructure and then magically 5G comes in or some other technology and replaces all of the millions and billions of dollars that government spent putting pipe in the ground.
Well, it kind of, bothers me with all the analog television that I have. I can no longer watch television.
Yeah, you'd have to have a special. In fact, it's so funny. I threw away 2 of those adapters that are HD adapters that take an HD signal and make it usable on an analog system, because that's what they did for a while with all these CRT tubes that were out there. That's
all over
funny
now.
you mentioned that. I just saw some of those not long ago, but that's funny. I hadn't thought about that.
The march of technology has left many things obsolete, for which we are, still grappling with what to do with it.
Yeah, and those CRT tubes could last forever. It's amazing the longevity. They last so much longer than these HD TVs do. But again, we I go back to what I said early in this when I over-talked and talked too much, because it's nice to.
Welcome back.
It's hard. Old habits die hard. But originally we talked about the role of government, how people are largely ignorant about what their local governments are doing. And that's the real shame, because newspapers had and have had historically provided a great public service. But through the internet and the consolidation of news enterprises and the failing of print media, and it's failed on a variety of fronts. I can remember going to the General Assembly in North Carolina in the 90s, and you would see, and even then it was contracting a little bit. There was these offices where all of the media from across the state inhabited during the day. It was kind of workspace for all of them, because they were covering whether you were in Randolph County or Scotland or Union or up in the Northeast, Bertie and those areas, and Brunswick. They all had reporters that covered the General Assembly. Well, now, it was let's just say 15 years ago, not even, probably 2008, 9, 10, when you would go in the General Assembly, there were a handful of people that were covering what the General Assembly was doing. Here's the irony with that, is at a time when the General Assembly was going from 600 bills a session to 1,200 bills a session. They doubled the amount of intricate bills that were covering every aspect of our life. The press was covering it less. And it covers it even less today. Right now, if I were to tell you that the Republicans in the North Carolina House were expanding Medicaid, the vast majority of people have no idea that's happening, unless they saw it on their evening news. And not as many people watch even that.
Right,
but
because that's been
massive changes that are happening, and yet we have less press. And in small counties like Columbus, Bladen, Pender, Brunswick, they're not smaller counties, but they're at least either more rural or more spread out, but they are not considered media counties. So there's very little coverage for media. So the citizens, by and large, don't know what's happening in Boiling Springs. They don't know what's happening at Oak Island. They don't know what's happening in their county commission. They don't know what's happening in their sheriff's department. They just don't know, because
I
there's
bet
nobody
they found
covering
out in
it.
Chadburn.
Maybe, but again, look at what you just said. Literally, something had to hit the fan and to get people to pay attention.
Oh yeah,
and there's an old saying. democracy dies in darkness. And right now, in the rural counties of North Carolina, democracy is dying in darkness because there's very little knowledge that's being shared with the public. And the people in power have a let 'em eat cake attitude until there's a revolution. And the sad reality is the revolution is a reaction to that ignorance. In other words, the people don't know. And then when they do, like a situation in Chadburn happens, or something massive happens, and then they turn people out of office. Now, to that point earlier also, when I was talking about revaluation and what counties do, they hold revaluations in non-election years because they hope, and this has gone back for time immemorial, they'll hold a reval next year in Brunswick County when there is no election. There won't be an election until 2024 for county commissioners. And so people will forget by then what was done to them. I often said, if you look, here's another funny one for you. If you think about when's tax day? When is federal income tax
That's
day?
April 15th.
April 15th. When are elections?
November.
So isn't it interesting?
Giving you, 5 months to forget?
Spreading that out as long. That is not by accident that you put if tax collection day were anywhere close to election day, election outcomes would look very different. Very different.
So we did it like October 15th.
If tax day was October the 15th, political messaging would be very, very different because all of a sudden the cost of all this bleeding heart, I want to solve the world's problems, would come to roost on people paying the bills, and they would be like, what the actual hell am I doing? No way I'm going to vote for you. Because there's a cost to everything.
Right. Now, would that cost be affected, meaning that, the campaigners are trying to raise money at the very time that they're being taxed? I think that would turn
It would be very different.
Yeah.
It would be very different. But think about this. Here's another way to look at it. Whether you're talking about the federal government, the state government, legislative, city council, whatever, all of these, everything that you're got, when I was a county commissioner, my 2 or 3 of my fellow commissioners would get incensed whenever we would go through the debate about the budget, and they would want a new program. And I would say the following that would just irritate them, and it would irritate people today, Republicans and Democrats alike, but it's true. That any new program, I would as a county commissioner, what I would say is this program worth taking away money from people who earn it to do? There were 2 things that worked there. One, a lot of times government will assume the responsibility for programs that people have stopped supporting. In other words, there's a lot of nonprofits out there that are funded by government now because they don't go out and raise their own money, or people have stopped giving to them. And so government jumps in and says, well, since you can't raise money for yourself, I will forcibly take money away from people who earn it, and I will give it to you to keep your nonprofit afloat. Now, that's not an indictment on nonprofits. Some nonprofits are really good partners with government and ultimately save money for folks. But at the same time, is it the role of government? And is it the design of government to do a lot of what it's doing now that are assumed responsibilities? That they've decided, I want to take money away from people who earn it, I want to give it away. And it makes county commissioners, city council, legislators feel really good about themselves to give other people's money away. And it's real easy. There's not a lot of guilt with it. And that's a shame because there should be a lot more sense about who's paying the bills. And sadly, most political types don't really care, and they really believe they're doing good. They don't do the homework. They don't look through it. They don't investigate it. They don't consider that people on fixed incomes and people that don't have a whole lot have to pay those property tax bills.
Well, it doesn't matter to them, so it's not important to them.
It's not. They don't consider it, and it's not important to them. It's other people's money. And the county manager, the city manager says, hey, here's all the money we got. Here's what we want to spend it on. Here will be the new tax rate. And they rubber stamp it. And they never spend the time to really dig into who's being affected by this. What does it mean? And what if times get tight? What if we do enter in a protracted recession?
Oh, that'll never happen.
Yeah.
Our economy is so strong right now. Used car sales are going through the roof. New houses are so affordable.
You're seeing things are returning. I looked at truck values. I had a friend of mine who had this beautiful truck, and I have a truck, and I was looking at my truck value. My used truck over the past 2 years has been worth more than what I paid for it.
Yep.
I wanted to get a little bit larger truck to pull some stuff and haul some stuff, but I was like, oh, hell no. The truck's worth more now, but if I wanted to replace that truck, it would cost me more as well.
Whoa, yeah.
But in the past 4 or 5 months, gas at $5 a gallon, guess what's happening to those trucks? The value on those trucks is dropping. The value on SUVs is dropping. The value, because the demand for these nice vehicles that get 12, 18 miles a gallon is not there. It's evaporating. So, there are consequences. The free market responds. It responds instantly. The free market responds ruthlessly, sometimes generously. I mean, I look at the house I sold in Cary. My wife and I sold. It increased in value dramatically. It almost make you want to cry. But at the same time, when those values start dropping, they'll be crushing too. They'll be, oh my God, I'm glad I got out of there. So
now I do have a comment from a viewer. Don't forget the Social Security they are stealing for government funding. Posted by Miss Faircloth, a regular viewer, listener of the show. I'm not exactly sure what she's referring to there, unless that's
Social Security. This is
it's always been weaponized.
Well, a lot of it is because the political left is really magnificent at Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security fear mongering. In other words, look, they're coming for your Social Security, and that's terrifying. If you're on a fixed income, that Social Security check, we've convinced people that it's enough to live on. It was never by design. It was never designed to be something people would live on. It was by design. In fact, if you look at the early creation of Social Security, it was actually designed to be indexed to your longevity. In other words, people kind of dropped dead around 65 to 68, so that's when you started collecting Social Security. And then as we started living longer and longer and longer, we never really changed the date that you start collecting. In other words, you were supposed to be a good citizen, work to a certain date, and then expire rapidly. So there would be a little money for you in the time you had between when you quit and when you died. And we became and over time, we became it was a beautiful plan. We lived longer. And so Social Security had to last longer, and you had 5 people contributing to Social Security for every person taking it out. It is a Ponzi scheme. I don't mean to be. It's not insulting to anyone collecting it. I don't begrudge anyone collecting it. But so you never. The longer you lived, the less you got out of Social Security in a way. You never would fully collect, unless you lived about 95 or 100, 125 or so. But you never really fully collected it. And now we've got more retirees because we have this huge bubble, and we're reaching the point where there's 1 worker, 2 workers for everybody on Social Security. So it's depleting very rapidly. It's not keeping up with inflation, even though this will be one of the largest cost of living increases, the COLA for Social Security recipients in a long time. I think it was 8% last year, maybe. And if I get that wrong, forgive me, but I know they had a massive one. But again, Social Security was never meant to be a living wage, but we convinced people because we never indexed it to people's longevity. In other words, as people were living longer, what they should have done was started pushing the age up to 70, 72, 75. And people never would have started to believe it was a living wage. And Congress, I think, intentionally didn't do that. Social Security is going broke, and there's no end in sight to how to fix it. And all we do is we do these kind of and Rand Paul is classic at pointing this out, Senator from Kentucky, that all we're doing is playing kind of Russian roulette. We kick the can down the road. We find a way to make it last for another 10 years or 5 years. And so that by the time it's really a problem, they won't be in office to deal with it. And they look like they kept it solvent.
Right, and they're retired and enjoying their Social Security.
Well, they're enjoying their congressional pension, which is very, very different than Social Security. Social Security is a minor player in the retirement world. Unfortunately, it's all that some people have because we convinced them it's all they needed, and it's not. And then, but we keep people in office because of fear of changing. George Bush tried this. George Bush, the younger, when he was in his second term, went on a tour, and I actually saw the speech. I went to see him speak in Raleigh, and he was trying to say, "Hey, look, why don't we take a portion of Social Security and allow people to privatize it? In other words, there's a town in Texas called Brownsville. It's called the Brownsville Experiment. It's one of the most successful experiments in retiree benefits in the history of the country, where they allowed people to invest their Social Security in the markets, like index funds and things like this nature, because the market over time always outperforms. And those people in Brownsville, Texas, ended up with 5, 6, 7 times as much money as Social Security recipients would ever receive. And so Bush looked at that, and many economists looked at it and said, hey, why don't we allow people to take a portion of their Social Security and invest it that way? And, of course, Democrats had seizures over that and said, oh, George Bush is going to destroy your Social Security. And Republicans looked at themselves in the mirror and saw that they were spineless and did nothing to help him, so they left him out to dry. And that attempt to save Social Security and put you in charge of your Social Security died. And it probably will never come back up, but it would have been a great way to help save it and provide people a path forward. In other words, it wasn't going to affect the people that were receiving it or anybody over the age of, at that time, I think it was about 45 or 50. But people younger coming into the system would have that opportunity. That way you don't rattle the cages of people who are already in it. But it fell on deaf ears, and it just died. I would love, for instance, there were many people that were pushing for people that were in their 40s at the time I was to say, hey, tell you what, keep everything I gave you or you took, whatever. And I'll take that 7.5 or 15%, and I'll invest in the market, and I will sign away my ability to receive Social Security ever in the future. Keep all my money, give it to the people and then I'll invest the rest of it. And that one fell on deaf ears. And unfortunately, it's a train wreck. We know that there's an end to the track. We don't know. We know kind of where it is, and we're just pushing the gas and fueling the fire that pushes that train off the cliff while thinking we're protecting seniors.
You obviously did not see Back to the Future. If you get going fast enough, by the time you hit that cliff, you just end up in a different time.
Well, there you go. Nice and simple time travel. That's the way we go back and fix everything, right?
Yeah.
No time ripple or anything.
We're going to undo the Industrial Revolution.
We'll create the most significant butterfly effect, and rip the planet in half. So, but yeah, I mean, barring time travel being an aspect of things, it's a problem. I mean, it is. It's not going to go away. And Medicaid's not going to fix things. Medicaid will never make medical costs go down. It just won't. If you expand it, you just expand a massive federal program. And we want to pretend it fixes things. And they don't. None of those three programs, Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, they don't make things cheaper. They don't make things better. They don't make people more secure.
But they sound good. I mean, it's kind of like naming. It's like naming your product a number one best, right?
Okay, you'll crack up. So it's what people want to believe. I went to the Cherokee. I went by the Cherokee Casino. No, I didn't do any gambling. I'm not opposed to it. I just wasn't in the mood to do it. And we were going to a couple restaurants, and we saw open tables everywhere, but we couldn't get in to the restaurants to have dinner. And we were asking, so what's the problem? They couldn't find help. And I said, what do you mean you can't find help? This is not the most rich area of North Carolina. They said people don't want to work. They had, TK, a $3,000 signing bonus to wait tables at the restaurant. I said, oh, what, you got to work 6 months to get that $3,000? I said, no, signing bonus. You get it in your first check. Still couldn't find people.
Where was this?
So then I'm coming in Cherokee Casino. So at the restaurants. So then I'm coming back, and I go through Greensboro, and I'm outside of a fast food restaurant. And the fast food restaurant literally has a sign out, $1,500 signing bonus, $15 an hour, come work for us, blah, blah, blah. Sitting on the side of the road outside that restaurant was a family begging for money. And so I'm thinking to myself, and I see this in Wilmington, it's an atrocious aspect of society. The people begging for money are making more money. Now think about it. They're in the heat of the day. They're out there. They're clearly capable of withstanding the weather conditions. That's brutal to be out.
They can obviously walk.
They can walk.
They're ambulatory.
They beg for money. They're ambulatory. And they're right in front of a sign that literally says, come inside, work in AC, get a job. They're making more money begging than they would be working.
Tax-free.
So if you and a lot of that's cash, not reported, supports a lifestyle maybe they want. And again, I'm not judging, but what I am saying is we should be very careful about these situations. You and I know there's plenty of infrastructure to support people who are down and out. Don't pretend there's not. There's tons of it. These people don't want it. And we have a serious workflow problem right now. And in the trades, I can tell you that there are houses that are sitting idle that can't be finished because there's not enough electricians, or plumbers, or HVAC guys. It is a horrible situation all over. That this is, and it's going to cost us. And the economic, I think we're teetering. I don't know that we'll go down there, but there's a really good chance that we're in for a protracted economic problem that's going to affect everyone.
We don't. Everyone. We need TikTok social media influencers more than we need toilet men and electric wire guys. We need sexy TikTok influencers that can tell me which hair product is best for me.
It's my favorite commercial. What is it? The guy with Mayhem? I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
I can't remember. That guy, when he says, I'm doing my latest hashtag dance challenge, I'm going to have tens and tens of views. That's just, when you said that, it reminded me of that. So, but anyway,
that's our greatest asset right now. That's our export. Is that our? I'm trying to think when you think of a country.
And then look, not to throw a monkey wrench. I could have a show on every one of these topics. And someday I might.
Should.
So, my favorite one right now is the concept of being fat. Not something that's a challenge for you, but certainly I could always stand to lose 10 to 20 pounds, and then I'll get trim and in shape, and then I'll let it all go to hell in a handbasket. But, we are afraid of insulting people who are overweight. Now, they know they're overweight. They don't care, and we're trying to make fat sexy. You'll see it in ads. How dare you insult people? And yet, one of the greatest threats to our health in almost every aspect, from cancer to diabetes to COVID, is being fat or obese. And we are at the point now where about 49% of the U.S. population is overweight. About 26% is obese. We're entering a period of time where, for the first time in American history, the majority of our population is going to be fat. And yet we're at the same time, you can't say anything about it. And you wonder why we're unhealthy, because we're fat. We eat poorly. We don't seem to give a rat's butt that we're eating in a way that's going to destroy our health. And then we're going to blame everybody else for our problems.
Right.
And it goes right back to the original concept of what we're talking about here, which is personal responsibility. We have a personal responsibility not to be ignorant. And we have a personal responsibility as citizens to be informed and find out what the hell's going on in our communities, our counties, our country. We have a personal responsibility to be informed about the rules and regulations and laws that affect us each and every day.
All right,
I got a personal responsibility.
All right, to that, when would you introduce these conversations? For example, the generation coming up, any of them. For the generation coming up, to introduce them to the concept of the civil arrangement that we have, the political infrastructure, who are our city councilmen.
From the time they're in grade school, when mom says,
"Oh my goodness,
you can't have that candy bar." You didn't let me finish, because we have a responsibility to our children to make sure they are good citizens. When you have a country full of people that don't have an obligation for citizenry, you don't have a country.
We have a bunch of people that don't know, never read the Constitution.
Oh, are you kidding me? The vast majority of people have never read it.
Because it was required.
If you tell them they need to read it, you're violating some kind of separation of church and state. They think it's a biblical thing. No, we don't have a connection. We should. We love our country. We love,
When would you introduce the Constitution and/or the Declaration to students?
Oh, as soon as people can start reading and understanding the language. It needs to be imprinted on them early. It needs to be imprinted on them when they're, before the time they're 10, they should understand the basic precepts of the Bill of Rights. At the very least, that's one thing. They need to understand history. They need to be able to contextualize it, too. It's one of the greatest efforts to destroy our country is to judge our nation through the prism of today instead of understanding the context of that time. And when you don't understand the context of time, you don't understand the context of the world when it was the worldview at any given point in history, you're not in a position to judge people. You really aren't. You don't know what life was like in 1772. And you judging people for the way they lived their life in 1772 with the knowledge that they had or didn't have, with the entire, you're judging it from a position of you have AC. You have a car, you have a television, a computer, the internet, and you're judging people in 1770s that were, lucky if they survived smallpox.
They didn't have light bulbs.
No.
My favorite thing in Hateful Eight when they had to use the rings and the cable to find the outhouse.
Yeah, and unfortunately a reality in America. And indoor plumbing is a relatively new concept. I think it's less than 100 years. We haven't even had indoor plumbing that long. So it's the kind of reality that it's tough, but we have an obligation, and we have an obligation to be informed. We have an obligation to act. We have an obligation. Freedom isn't free, and we have a lazy society that takes freedom for granted and then wants to bitch and complain when it isn't what they want. It's this relatively new narcissistic way of looking at the world. And my wife and my friends, they roll their eyes at me when I say Oregon Trail. If I say it all goes, there's two things I say that they know me well enough. And it's one is it all goes back to the mammoth. That's one, which is the concept of male and female roles in society. It all goes back to the mammoth. And what would that look like? There are differences between the sexes that are made manifest in the way we conduct ourselves. And even, when your wife can shop, I can't stand around and shop, but that's hunter-gatherer stuff. She can't stand it if I go out in the woods and stay for 2 or 3 days. But that's the me. Now, that's the woolly mammoth stuff, and I could connect everything. The remote control is the spear. Why do guys always want to have the remote control? But that's a whole other comedic routine. The second, it is. And so that's part of it. Is that it all goes back to the woolly mammoth. And anyway, I get lost in thought on that sometimes, but it really does.
Now, did you have any sort of civics or constitutional education in your public school?
I did.
When?
But I was also, I had it in grade school a little bit, and I had it in middle school and then high school. But I would say the two biggest influences on me on that regard were, back then, the Boy Scouts were a different kind of organization. And the Boy Scouts made you go to get merit badges. I had a rifle and shotgun merit badge because I learned gun safety and how to operate. And I had to pass a test to get that merit badge. I had a civics merit badge where I went to city council meetings and understood how the city council worked. You had, a reptile study, mammal study. I had, dozens of merit badges that were great educational opportunities for me to advance my learning through scouting that had nothing to do with schools, with public education. It was a public education of a different sort. And it was huge in history and steeped in that stuff. And it was a great organization. So I credit the Scouts with part of my education. My parents and grandparents, very rural. And so I spent a lot of time in Columbus County and Lee County on farms and learning about the harshness of life. Oh, the other concept that makes people roll their eyes about me is Oregon Trail. I think about the people who survived the Oregon Trail, westward expansion. And no, I don't want to get into a long, protracted discussion about indigenous folks and the way they were treated. The point being, think about being a mother and father and throwing your 3 kids on a wagon train and heading out west 2,000 miles through. You didn't even know what the conditions would be like. And if one of your kids died on the way, that was life. Horrible, but that was life. Kids get in there because something might eat you. Listen to us. You imagine, I just think about the people who wouldn't survive today, couldn't deal with that, and want to blame others for their existence being challenging in any way.
I'd have difficulty shedding a tear under those circumstances.
Yes. So Oregon Trail and woolly mammoth, those are the two things that are easily. Could these people have survived a trip across the ocean in the 1700s?
So now you've given me a whole new phrase. When I start, when somebody starts talking to me and they're just annoying me by being there, they are basically the dysentery to my social event.
There you go. You can use it any way you like. but it's true. I mean, it's true. Life is unfair. Life is harsh. Life is challenging, but it's also beautiful. And it's made all the more beautiful by the people that we surround ourselves with. And you should surround yourself with positive people, but you should surround yourself with honest people too.
Well,
because your friends are the ones that can say, Chad, you need to lose a few pounds.
right.
The people who aren't your friends are the ones that let you walk around with your zipper undone all day.
The
those
emperor
aren't your
has
friends.
no clothes.
Yeah. So, pick your friends wisely and be around those that you wish to emulate. Be around people that you admire. Have mentors. Have people you admire. And admire people who overcome adversity and have a degree of toughness to them. That doesn't mean mean or ignorant or they yell at the TV. It means people you admire for what they've achieved in life. Emulate those. And regardless, whether you go to college or you don't go to college, that has nothing to do with your ability or your intellect. But have a drive. Be successful. And you can be successful with hard work and diligence and not complaining about everything around you.
Now, I want to continue on the education aspect of the Constitution, the Declaration, and civics in general. It has not been taught, as far as I know, in at least the last 35 years in the public school system. Would it be fair to bring it back, even as they're trying to bring back other educational theory systems, as a precursor? Meaning, if we brought the Constitution and the Declaration to the kids' concept, or at least their awareness at a young 7, 8, 9 years old, by the time they hit 10 or 12, you can start hitting them with the more difficult, unfair, and awkward type situations.
Well, I'm on a school board for a charter school system. We start teaching kindergartners and first graders a timeline. 1066 Battle of Hastings. All the way up to the Declaration of Independence. World War I. Now, the kindergarten and first graders don't know what that means. Okay, but what you do is you teach them these kind of interesting. They go through a mantra, if you would, of 1066 Battle of Hastings, 1244, blah blah blah, 1495, blah blah blah, 1776, and they go through this, and it's kind of a chant almost,
right?
But they memorize it. And so when you see kindergartners or first graders doing that, and it's this timeline, it's up on the wall, so you're teaching them to read and stuff, they don't know the context of those events. But about second, third, fourth grade, you start teaching them the context of those events. They already know the events. Now you're adding context to it. And then as they get into
fleshing out the skeleton,
grade,
as it were.
Yeah, and then you keep filling in. And so they have a better understanding. They're naming all the states and the state capitals by second grade, and they know that the history of events in first grade, and then they have context in later grades, and those people come out. We even teach Latin, because Latin is the foundational language, it's a foundational precept to everything, whether you're in medicine or law or any other aspect of society. Having an understanding of Latin helps give you a basis for multiple languages too, especially the Romance languages. So a lot more. Our language is Germanic. It's a whole different discussion. But, yeah, I think you start at the beginning. You start at the beginning, and you never let up, because there is an obligation. And then, again, I would say scouting influenced that, because it's certainly the Scout motto, and it's the Pledge of Allegiance, and all those things.
And that's why I'm trying to encourage more people to, get more upset about the absence of education that would make the entire voter system a much more robust vehicle. At least,
well, until we get voter ID, we don't value voting.
Well, until we start addressing our education, we don't value education or children either.
Yeah, I agree. Well, education's become a social tool more than it is a citizenry tool, and it should be citizenry. It's not social, and it shouldn't be social. It should, that's your parents, your culture, and everything else. But education is about foundational principles and well-roundedness and being a citizen.
And having a safe space, a safe place to have awkward, difficult, uncomfortable conversations. Because I would not want my child to have that, first encounter with someone different to not have some sort of barrier or environment in which
you don't need to be discussing sexual preferences in kindergarten.
No, but by the time you hit 13, 14, that environment would already be created. So now that they're experiencing at age 12, 13, or even at 9 or 8, what is this? What am I, to be able to ask those questions. That even in the school system now, we can't address, some of which is questionable even amongst ourselves.
Well,
But it's hard to put it into words because it's, my school of education at the time was radically different than what we have now. And it was very, very depressing to realize what we're not teaching.
Well, history is, they have a curriculum that does include history. Unfortunately, it's become steeped
Well, it includes
in
history, but
rhetoric.
it doesn't explain the 7 articles, the 5 useful articles of the Constitution. It doesn't walk
and the
through
preamble and
right.
the Declaration of Independence and the so many different. I mean, we should.
We
be
went through it
reading
line
even,
by line, man. In our
well,
class,
you've got Hume and you've got Locke and you've got so many great authors that influenced the founders, and they had concepts. They looked at our system and thought, "Wow, this is remarkable." And the people like Locke before it that were influencing it. And we've bastardized the Bible in such a way that we've made it
American.
You can't. Yeah, you've made it political, and there are concepts there that we are set up in a Judeo-Christian way. If you look at the foundational principles of the country, they are biblical, and they are people like Locke that influenced the way in which we're set up and the understanding of mankind. We judge it by race nowadays, but back then we're looking at oppressive governments and we're looking at oppressive faith. We're looking at a Holy Roman Church and we're looking at a tyrannical British government. And both of those were both. There is a belief in God in the way this country was set up, and there is a belief in the power of freedom that we are endowed by the Creator with rights. It's not what the government can do. It's really what the government can't do. And we've flipped that around a little bit. And now we've got kind of a socialistic belief that the government can solve things. And the government doesn't solve problems. I mean, look at society. With the exception of the interstate highway system, which isn't really solving a problem, it's creating a path for commerce.
And direct
it doesn't really solve.
Reaction to World War II Germany infrastructure, by the way.
No doubt, Eisenhower. I think that's one of the greatest legacies of Dwight Eisenhower, the interstate highway system. But having said that, I do think that we've gotten away from that. We honestly believe back to ignorance, and then I've got to go. In ignorance that we believe government will solve problems with the full knowledge that it doesn't, and it hasn't. It hasn't solved poverty. Yet we spent trillions. We've spent more on that than war. And, we can complain about the cost of war, and we should, but we also should complain and be cognizant of the fact that we haven't solved poverty, not with government. In fact, we got people begging on the streets, but not because they're poor, but because we've created a path for them to survive doing that, make more money that way, and not want to be in the system. We haven't solved, the issue of Social Security, Medicaid, and Medicare. We haven't solved health care. We've made it worse. Obama didn't solve health care or make it cheaper or make it more affordable or make you keep your plan. All the things that were promised about it were just the opposite. In fact, if anyone's really being honest, look at any government program and see that it really accomplished what it set out to do. And the answer is almost universally no. I mean, and I think it was Hayek, it was Friedman probably, I think it was Milton Friedman, a great economist, who said, pick any 3 letters in the English language and you probably have described an agency that can be fundamentally reduced or gotten rid of.
But that's
and he's right.
And we build systems to fit systems under systems. Then we have to create another system to oversight the system that we just created.
You design systems in governance to perpetuate themselves.
Well, that's how people with no marketable skill can stay employed.
Right. The purpose of a government program is to keep itself in existence and justify itself every year at budget time. There's no group of people in city, county, state, or federal government that come around at budget time saying, you know what, we really don't need my agency. We really don't need this program. We really don't need, to help people who are left-handed learn how to start a fire. We really need more money. Really, the thing we need more money to do this because, I need to hire more staff. And unfortunately, we don't have the political will. I mean, Democrats love this kind of stuff. Oh, yes, we do. And Republicans, 90% of Republicans are so soft because they like being in office that they're like, well, I don't know that we need all of it, but we probably need most of it. And so they go along. And then when someone does stand up and say, hey, we don't, then they're ostracized, castigated, and accused of being too conservative. And instead of looking at those people as kind of, oh, wait, they're the guardians of the gate. They're the difference between us and complete tyranny. They're lionized. You know, you look at the Rand Pauls up there. If you look at, so there are some more conservative members of the General Assembly, and there are certainly a couple of county commissioners that are that way. But they're yelled at, screamed at, hated. Oh, you're standing in the way of me getting my stuff. Oh, okay. You're actually saving. You know, the 90% of taxpayers that are helping you. But okay, your stuff's more important than the 90%.
Well, of course it is.
But I got to run because I got some more stuff. And TK, thank you for the opportunity. What you did, we went without a commercial break. I've never done that.
Well, it was a good conversation. We're about to make up for those commercials here in just a moment. Thanks again, Mr. Adams. It's been a wonderful morning.
Hope I didn't bore you.
Stay busy.
Take care.
And we'll see you tomorrow. No, we won't. We'll see you sometime soon, though, but it will be soon. All right, he's already gone. With that in mind, we're going to take an extended commercial break only because I've been through a lot of coffee and Mountain Dew, and I need a break. I will see you guys in a minute. Don't go nowhere.
Hello, I'm Matt Bennett with WWAY News. High fuel prices are causing some local emergency service providers to cut costs. According to GasBuddy.com, the lowest price for gas in Brunswick County is $4.69 a gallon. Emergency services are also cutting corners due to the rising prices. Agencies in Southport and Oak Island tell us keeping residents safe is their number one concern. They're choosing other ways to cut costs, like delaying building improvements or purchasing newer vehicles. The Southport Police and Fire Departments say their fuel budget has gone up about 75% so far because of rising gas prices. A North Carolina man, who authorities are calling a serial killer, has been sentenced to life in prison without parole in the disappearance and death of an elderly woman from South Carolina. In a plea agreement, 59-year-old Daniel Glenn Prince pleaded guilty this week to kidnapping resulting in the death of 81-year-old Edna Suttles from Greenville County. She disappeared in August 2021, and her body was found buried at his home in May of this year. Authorities say they also linked him to the disappearances or deaths of 3 other women, ranging in age from 61 to 88. The state's Department of Health and Human Services is reporting the first confirmed case of monkeypox in a North Carolina resident. Monkeypox is typically spread by skin-to-skin contact. The person is currently isolating at home. The department says no further information will be shared to protect the patient's privacy. And the U.S. Supreme Court has given North Carolina GOP lawmakers a win in the ongoing fight over the state's voter ID law. The 8-1 decision doesn't end the more than 3-year dispute over the voter law, but does allow Republican leaders to intervene in the federal lawsuit to defend the law, which was passed in 2018. Opponents of that law claim it discriminates against minority groups who may have difficulties getting an ID. For more on these stories, you can head over to WWAYTV3.com. I'm Matt Bennett. Have a great day.
Happy Friday, everybody. I'm WWAY meteorologist Ramel Carpenter with your Storm Track 3 forecast. Get ready for a nice start to our weekend, the first weekend of summer on tap, and highs today will climb into the upper 80s and even the low 90s well inland of the coast. Coastal areas will get into the middle 80s this afternoon. Beautiful beach weather on tap with the low-end risk for rip currents for southern-facing beaches. Eastern-facing beaches do have a moderate risk for rip currents, so use a little bit of caution before getting into the water. As for tonight, quiet conditions stick around as we drop down to the upper 60s and the low 70s. Get your full forecast on WWAY and WWAYTV3.com.
This news and weather is brought to you by 2 Men and a Truck. For your free quote, go to 2menandatruck.com. 2menandatruck.com.
Veteran Awareness sponsored by You Are Not Alone. Today's veteran homeless rate is approximately 19,750, and the numbers are declining because of the various veteran programs. If you are a veteran you know is homeless, please call 877-4AID-VET. This is a confidential and toll-free call. From this veteran to other veterans, please be there to help our brother and sister veterans. Again, the number is 1-877-424-3838. And thank you for your service.
Hey everyone, Ben Hawkins here with Cross Country Mortgage. Rates are still at historic lows, and there has never been a better time to purchase your dream home or refinance your existing. With over 300 loan products including conventional, FHA, VA, USDA, renovation, and jumbo, we are certain we have the right loan product for you and your family. Call me today to be pre-qualified to make the offer on your next dream home. 910-352-3373 or visit my website at lendwithben.com.
I am State Farm Agent Rob Renz, and I want to help you get to a better place. Visit us online at ilminsurance.com. That's ilminsurance.com. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
One Love Tennis started in 2013 to give back to young boys and girls. We now go through 460 kids a week that are learning about life skills, learning to succeed in life through academics and tennis. Putting those two together, if you do them well, you can write your own ticket. To get involved in this program, go to our website, one-love-tennis.org.
Folks, the sad truth of it is most of what we're seeing in the news cycle is just noise, and it's recycled noise at that. Nothing informative, nothing that actually helps us discern the times that we live in. That's why we started doing Heard Tell. Every morning right here on Big Talker Network, 7 a.m. with a replay at 3 p.m., we talk and discuss the issues of the day, culture and politics with knowledgeable guests, no yelling, no caterwauling, just grown folk talk about the issues that matter. Join me, Andrew Donaldson, every weekday morning for Heard Tell.
My name is Brian Wilson. I'm running for District Court Judge. During my lifetime, I've gone from protecting your God-given and constitutional freedoms as a combat vet of the U.S. military to working locally as a carpenter building homes while I worked my way through college. For the past 17 years, I've been protecting and defending your constitutional rights in the courtroom. I'm currently protecting our rights of our most vulnerable, our children, as the guardian ad litem attorney advocate for the children of Brunswick, Columbus, and Bladen County. I've spent my career serving our country, our state, and our communities, so I ask that you continue your confidence by voting for me, Brian Wilson, in the primary elections on May 17th. Thank you.
O'Leary's Automotive Repair has multiple locations in the area in Hampstead, Leland, the Myrtle Grove area, Ogden, and Wrightsboro. O'Leary's Automotive Repair, a trusted, locally owned business since 2006.
Hey everyone, Ben Hawkins here with Cross Country Mortgage. Rates are still at historic lows, and there has never been a better time to purchase your dream home or refinance your existing. With over 300 loan products including conventional, FHA, VA, USDA, renovation, and jumbo, we are certain we have the right loan product for you and your family. Call me today to be pre-qualified to make the offer on your next dream home. 910-352-3373 or visit my website at lendwithben.com.
Teachers and parents, the North Carolina Symphony is here to support you as you carry on the education of your children and students. Take your kids on a free virtual field trip to the Symphony with a virtual education concert and companion student book. Go on a virtual journey to learn what makes music music with music by William Grant Still, Beethoven, Brahms, and more. Access the free video and student book with password 1932 at ncsymphony.org/virtual.
Folks, the sad truth of it is most of what we're seeing in the news cycle is just noise, and it's recycled noise at that. Nothing informative, nothing that actually helps us discern the times that we live in. That's why we started doing Heard Tell. Every morning right here on Big Talker Network, 7 a.m. with a replay at 3 p.m., we talk and discuss the issues of the day, culture and politics with knowledgeable guests, no yelling, no caterwauling, just grown folk talk about the issues that matter. Join me, Andrew Donaldson, every weekday morning for Heard Tell.
Listen to Tom Goolsby on The Chad Adams Show.
People with common sense know that the entire theory of socialism is one big lie.
The Big Talker 106.7 FM.
Hey, welcome back to the Big Talker Network. You are listening to The Asylum, your refuge in a world gone mad. Great conversation with our friend Chad Adams this morning. Look forward to working with him some more as life settles down for him in the Caswell Beach, Oak Island, wherever that is. That's down there in the Magic Land, where it's expensive to park. Which is why it's good to have a friend who lives down there so that you can park in their driveway and go enjoy the beach without being in any kind of trouble whatsoever. That is a bonus. Anyway, so for our last half hour, maybe we should do some of the asylum-friendly news. Is that what y'all are waiting on? Is that it? I guess it would be time. Let me pull some up here. There's been a couple of them that I thought were just redonkulous. Bing, ding, ding is a no. I love doing this. This is... How about dining? Guy asked me once, don't you hate it when you go out on a first date and your girl's ordering lobster? And I'm like, McDonald's doesn't sell lobster. If you're doing your first date, yeah. Anyway, so coming out of New York Post, Kate Colnice, I guess. Colnici. Yeah, from the Sun, actually. I get all my food by dumpster diving. Trolls said they'd never want to eat at my house, but joke's on them. I'm saving loads. That's a quote, by the way. Let's see. A nurse has gone viral on social media after revealing how she dives deep into the trash to find food. With inflation now hitting 6.2% and squeezing family budgets, most people are forced to look for ways to spend less, whether that means ditching your daily coffee at Starbucks or finding a cheaper Primark dupe. But despite having less money and higher expenses than ever, people all around the world continue to bin food, with Brits throwing away a fifth of their grocery shopping. 20%. The ever-growing food waste is a common issue that doesn't sit well with Jillian, a 29-year-old travel nurse who's decided to take matters into her own hands. When people see that I am a traveling nurse, they realize that I have a perfectly good income. I can afford my own groceries. But to her, as she explains in a video on TikTok, it comes down to the morality of it all. Consumerism, food waste, etc. is something I have been passionate about kind of my whole life, on and off. Although Jillian has tried several ways to combat the problems, such as going zero waste, her new project is dumpster diving. It doesn't seem right to go and buy new food if there's perfectly good food, unspoiled, in the dumpster just waiting for me, she said, adding that it's also fun at times. When I do find something, it's exciting. The woman from Vancouver, Canada, regularly takes to social media to share her journey and the food treasures she's managed to find in the dumpster. The self-subbed human raccoon, the human raccoon, recently, come on, Rocket, recently went viral after sharing footage of her rummaging through trash to find food. The clip, which has taken the internet by storm, racking up more than a whopping 4.4 million views, 4.4 million views, shows the nurse leaning over a huge blue dumpster before performing some impressive acrobatics and diving in. Cutting up some limes and oranges, the nurse said, "I've started dumpster diving. I actually think I eat healthier than I did before, because for the most, she comes across fruit that is a tiny bit too ripe for purchasers." Julian now drinks a fresh smoothie almost every day. Maybe there's a bruise or two, but it's great frozen in a smoothie, she revealed. To go along with the refreshing and zesty drink, Julian also baked a cauliflower-based pizza, which she had found in the trash, still cold. It was delicious, she described the meal, for which she had paid almost nothing, apart from the little splash of oat milk and protein powder to go along with the fruit smoothie. But although Julian believes her mom would be so proud, not everyone was a fan of her food-finding methods. One critic commented, "And this is why I don't eat at everyone's house, damn." Another added that it wasn't necessarily too sanitary either. It's the fact that it's from a bin. Rats and all sorts are in there. However, whilst others wondered if this was some joke, there were plenty of those who took to the nurse's side. Like one viewer quoted as, "I work at a grocery store and we honestly throw stuff that's not even expired or bad." So, I mean, honestly, I don't see anything wrong with this. You go. Another person agreed, writing, also, once you work at a grocery store, your jaw drops at the pounds of fresh food they throw away. Need to see to believe. Okay, but I'm thinking, if it's still wrapped without a gnaw hole in it, or, some rat had been eating through it, right? Because they show you a picture of the pizza box, and it looks, it has not been tampered with. But it does look funny with half your body extended out the side of a blue dumpster. Then again, we're doing things a little bit differently here. Earlier, Chad mentioned the folks that are walking up and down the street begging your monies on the side of the streets right there. There's a church on, I believe, it is 16th and Market Street as you're headed south on 16th. Headed down to the hospitals. And on the left-hand side, there is a church. The church is still there. And you can see this completely destroyed chunk of earth from the corner of 16th and Market, extending up 16th Street, and extending back away from, into the ghetto side, where the grass that was once there has just been trodden and killed down into dirt. So the church, gotta appreciate this move. They cordoned off and reseeded the dead area. So for once, that corner was not awkward and uncomfortable with somebody walking by, staring at me, expecting me to give them money. Okay, if I had some money, I would probably be more giving than I am, but sorry, one, I ain't got it, and two, I ain't giving it to you. I'll give it to one of the programs that might be helping you. But if you don't want that help, that's on you. Get off the street. There was a law against panhandling in Albuquerque. I don't know if it's still on the books, but yeah. And once you're, done with vagrancy and that sort of thing, you end up just in the prison system for the rest of your life. Congratulations. Your parents raised an idiot, a useless idiot. So if you need to spend the rest of your life institutionalized because you never developed a marketable skill, that's on you. Not me. I had nothing to do with it. And to expect me to cover your expenses, you're out of your mind. But I think anybody and everybody, every business who has somebody traipsing up and down, killing the grass in their little right-of-way area, should definitely be allowed to cordon that area off, reseed the grass, and prevent anybody from marching on that section again. And what's interesting is you never see the panhandling out in the Mayfair or Landfall or Forum area. Why not? Is there a different set of rules for what happens at the Forum but they can do it downtown? They can just accost you while walking the street or parking your car in downtown Wilmington. But they can't do it at Mayfair. Because there's more money at Mayfair than there is downtown. I mean, downtown might have some of the banks and stuff, but all the people walking around with money, they're not downtown. The people going downtown are either lawyers, legal people, right, and a few professionals, and the bulk of them are going to be criminals or alleged criminals looking for some sort of legal relief. And these people do not have money. The real people, the walking around people, the walking around money people, those neighborhoods, you're not allowed to do this. So why is it different for, I mean, do you see anybody panhandling on Wrightsville Beach? I've seen it panhandling in Southport before. I don't know how they get by with that. But I think the greatest detour or deterrent, there we go. The deterrent is to remove those areas, right? We just planted this grass. Unless you're willing to pay me to reseed this again, get the hell off of my lawn. So if there's no city ordinance or state ordinance or any law against it, then maybe it's time that, some of the people take back the power of their own property and say, you know what? We're not taking this. Get off my lawn. I don't want you here. And look, as Chad pointed out, there's a sign right next to you that says, we are hiring. $3,000 sign-on bonus? Are you kidding? You got me tempted. I just don't like to drive and I don't like people. So, if I had to deal with the general public all the way around, and certainly a lot of the people in the public, that when I do shows, I enjoy that the show that we are producing is entertaining people and people are having a great time. Awesome. Have a great time. Don't talk to me. Because almost inadvertent, just without fail, whoever it is that wants to talk to me is trying to pull some sort of really bad joke, usually at somebody else's expense, and expecting me to be a party and participant in that. No, man, I'm just here to run sound. I'm just here to make your ear holes happy. That's all. I'm not here for political debate or discourse. I'm not here for some sort of conspiracy theory educational format. No. Just let me do my job. Leave me out of your life's plans. I've lived 50 years without you in my life, without knowing you. I'm pretty sure I could pull off another 50 if I make it that far. So, check yourself. You're not that important to me or anybody else. Anyway. That's been, oh, this is gross. Again, New York Post, Emily Lefroy. Apparently, everybody got a side hustle going. And Emily has pointed one out. I make nearly $10,000 a month selling my toenail clippings. They say being frugal pays off, and it certainly has for one North Carolina woman who is making $10,000 a month by selling her random waste. Rebecca Blue makes money selling items such as used bath water, her contraceptive coil, armpit hair, used earbuds, and even toenail clippings. The savvy 28-year-old charges between $98 and $356 for her personal rubbish, telling the Mirror she doesn't throw away dirty things anymore. If I'm in the mood for a new wardrobe, I can sell my dirty clothes to get new items, Blue explained. I offer a selling service that brings pleasure and makes the buyers feel good in a safe environment. According to Blue, the top 3 requested items are used socks, underwear, and tights. It's not even that attractive. Gross. All the pictures are like, stop. I usually sell them after wearing them for $50, she said. Of these garments, I charge more for the unique and weird requests, such as tongue scrapings, bath water, and cotton buds with earwax on. The crafty entrepreneur added she sells the experience rather than just the tangible goods. Other waste she's made money from includes selling spit and chewed food. I basically make money from anything that is attached to my body, she said. Blue told the publication she's using the money to set up her own animal shelter. Gross. This is who we are. This is what we want in our lives. This is... This is the sad state of affairs. And you should see a doctor about that otitis media, sweetheart. It's going to lead to deafness and all sorts of infections. And I'm betting that happened at a rave or in conjunction with shoving that Q-tip damn near into your brain. If more than one Q-tip comes back a solid yellow color, you really should be seeing a doctor, sweetheart. And you're here in North Carolina, looks like you're wearing a nurse's outfit. The tattoos sort of throw the whole thing into a mix. But hey, that's who we are, social media influencers, buying toenails, $10,000 a month. This is the making stupid people famous that I find so flippin' aggravating. Why y'all do this? Why? Stop it. Good Lord. Stop it. Ooh. Ooh. Bad bugs. Bad bugs. Sky News. Love these guys. Okay. Microscopic mites that have sex on your face at night could face evolutionary oblivion, said scientists. Their ecology becoming so closely synchronized with humans shows the species is on its way from being a parasite to a symbiont, an organism entirely dependent on another for its survival, in this case, us. Dimodix follicularum. I think that's how it's pronounced. If you think giant pandas had it bad, spare a thought for the tiny parasitic mites that live in the pores of the skin on our faces, which may be destined for an evolutionary dead end according to a new analysis of their DNA. More than 90% of us host the 0.3 millimeter long mites in the oily folds of our faces, mostly living in the pores near our noses and eyelashes. It is probably the closest relationship to another animal most of us never knew we had. The mite, known as Dimodix follicularum, I guess that's pretty close, spends its entire lifetime living in our skin follicles. In the daytime, they feed on our oily skin secretions. At night, they leave the pore to find mates and find new follicles in which to have sex and lay their eggs. If the thought makes you want to wash your face, forget it. You've been carrying the mites since you were born. They're passed from mother to baby during breastfeeding and live too deep in the pores to be washed out. Besides, we need them, says Dr. Alejandro Perotti of the University of Reading, who co-authored the study. We should love them because they are the only animals that live on our bodies our entire life, and we should appreciate them because they clean our pores. Besides, they're cute, says Dr. Perotti, sorry. The Dimodix mite. It's got needle mouth parts, a cephalic, and little hooklets to crawl around, articulators that are like legs or whatever. Perhaps not everyone would agree. The germaphobes. The mites have 4 pairs of stubby legs, each with a pair of claws. Beyond that, a long worm-like body, which, under the microscope, can sometimes be seen protruding from our hair follicles. But this latest study, published in the journal Molecular Biology and Evolution, has shown just how incredibly intimate their relationships with humans has become. The researchers analyzed the genome of the mites and found it has the smallest number of functional genes of any arthropod, which is an insect if you're curious, like crustaceans and arachnids and insects. The animals have become so dependent on their human host that their genome is eroding, stripped down to the bare minimum of genes needed to survive, this research concludes. They found that the gene which normally regulates waking and sleeping in arthropods has been lost. Instead, the organism detects changes in levels of the hormone melatonin in our skin secretions. It goes up when we sleep, telling Dimodix to get up and goes down when we wake up. Their cue to head back down our oily pores for dinner. They've also lost the gene that protects their bodies from UV light. What's the point when you only come out at night? Even their body plan is minimalist. Each leg is powered by just a single muscle cell. Their ecology becoming so closely synchronized with humans shows the species is on its way from being an external parasite to an internal symbiont, an organism entirely dependent on us for its existence. As their genetic diversity shrinks, and with it their ability to leave their host and find new mates, they are also at a possible risk of eventually going extinct, either when humans do or as a result of some significant change to their environments. It was once believed Demodex, whatever, was a cause of common skin conditions, but in healthy people, the evidence is Demodex, I guess. It actually helped prevent problems like acne by unblocking pores. But that's not the only reason we should care about them, says Dr. Perotti. We are living in a world where we should be protecting biodiversity, and these are our very own animal. Creepy and freaky. So, just letting you know that it may not be much longer that we have to deal with the disgusting creatures having sex on our face at night. Dinner and a date. And this one only because I can't resist one more story coming out of UPI. Ben Hooper, thank you for saving me once again, Mr. Ben. Swedish man, for some unknown reason, we'll find out. Oh, it's a world record, that's why. Swedish man throws washing machine more than 14 feet. On June 22nd, a Swedish strongman broke a Guinness World Record in Italy when he threw a washing machine a distance of 14 feet, 7.2 inches. Johan Espenkrona broke the world record while going head-to-head with Dutch strongman Kelvin de Ruyter on the set of Guinness World Records Locho de Record in Milan, whatever. The bodybuilders took turns throwing washing machines in an attempt to break the world record of 13 feet 6.6, which was set by Lithuanian man Zydrunas Savikas. De Ruyter initially broke the record with a 14-foot 1-inch throw, but Espenkrona ultimately took the title by throwing his washing machine 14 feet 7.2 inches. Now, what's interesting is all of these people come from the part of the world where washing machines are exceedingly rare. See, we can't have anything nice. Even if you give them nice washing machines, this is what they do with them. They smash them. And, of course, it's probably all littered down the hillside, much like driving through any country road in Kentucky, Tennessee, North Carolina, Virginia, West Virginia, all over the place in America. We just like to throw our stuff out as long as you throw it down the hill, I can't see it from the house. And we do that with our other trash as well, right? But only as humans would make Rover, our little pet rover on Mars, go back and visit its trash. Look what you did. That's you. That's your trash. You go clean it up. Or you're not coming home. Oh, wait. You can't come home. So do what you want. Whatever. We're just going to trash the place. That's... If humans have one exported item for which we will be known, it is trash. It is absolute littering the planet. Littering other planets. My goodness. All right, so next week we will be rejoined by Bill Moore, who is back in town. He will be joining our show 8:30 on Monday. At 9:30, I believe, on Monday, we will have Paul Vallone from the Grassroots North Carolina, host, producer, director, and commentator for Guns, Politics, and Freedom. He'll be on Monday. Wednesday, we will have Dan Romand and Dr. Larry Cahoon from Cape Fear River Watch. So, stay tuned for more updates. All Things Brunswick on Tuesday. Voice in the Pen on Wednesdays. Yeah, we're having a lot of fun, folks. And we're getting further along in the process. So, if you would, please join along and be part of the family. Big Talker website at bigtalker.live. Peruse the website and the schedule of content. Download the app for Android and iOS devices. You can even use the Listen Live tab to play along with anything you want to hear. Also, you can send us an email with any comments, questions, concerns, or critiques you may have, and we will see you next week.
Keeping Wilmington informed. The Big Talker 106.7 FM WFBT, Carolina Beach.
Hey everyone, Ben Hawkins here with Cross Country Mortgage. Rates are still at historic lows, and there has never been a better time to purchase your